This conference will now be recorded.
All right, everybody. The time is now 7:02. I apologize. I forgot to start the screen, but we have the screen up and rolling now. It is Monday, December 21st, 2020. If I could please get everyone to make sure your phones are silent, which mine are not, and then rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and take the roll. Councilmember Rounds.
Here.
Councilmember Chapman.
Here.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Here.
Councilmember Plaza.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Graham.
Here.
Councilmember Holland.
Present.
All council members are here and accounted for. We have no presentations or proclamations this evening. Before we get started, I want to please remind everyone, Mr. Fredericks, can you make sure the overflow is on and is the dial turned all the way for the overflow? Perfect, thank you. As you speak this evening, if I can make sure that everyone speaks into their microphone, and so we can pick you up on the mics on our recordings, please. Thank you. All right, next we have citizen communication for items not on the agenda. And first up we have Commissioner Weil. Have you come in this way? I'll have you go over to the podium when you're done out the back door, please. We'll provide you 5 minutes. Please let us know why you're here. Introduce yourself and let us know why you're here.
Thanks for having me. Bob Weil, Commissioner of Port of Woodland, President of the board. I'm here to invite everybody, all our elected officials, to a WQCC meeting that we're putting on. We're going to put it on January 20th. The WQCC, if everybody remembers, is basically all the elected officials getting together, communicating, becoming stronger as one team. The history of the QCC a little bit is basically that. We need to work together. The port's got a lot going on right now. We've got Centennial Industrial Park going. Early in the spring, we're going to be putting Roseway Industrial Park out to bed. By the end of the summer, we will have our dark fiber all the way to Cougar, and we'll get to start having high-speed internet up there. Our rail design right now for the Kunis Road project is on by midsummer will be at 30%, where we can go get funding to go all the way to Austin Point. We have a study going on right now for Martin Park, so we're busy. But that's right now. We're planning for 5-20 years from now is what we're working on. We need to know where the city is on basically the living bottoms. You know, annexation, whether it's in the thoughts, where we're at. You know, that's kind of why we want to sit down and get together with everybody and kind of go over it. So, anyway, I've already talked to the school board, and some of their members are going to be coming to the WQCC. I know I've only been a part of a couple of them. Carol could probably speak highly of a bunch of them she's been to. But anyway, that's basically why I'm here.
All right.
It's going to be January 20th, 6 o'clock. I'll have Jennifer send out an email to everybody, invite you guys, the link to it. And hopefully it's the first of many communications between us. We're definitely all stronger as one team than we are individuals.
Have you reached out to the county yet, Mr. Weil?
I have not, and I don't want to on our first meeting.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I will after that.
Gotcha. All right.
I want to make sure we're on the same page first.
Okay.
Or not. You know, we might be looking totally different ways. We don't know.
All
But
right.
as important in our planning, we need to know where you guys are, the school is, and you guys should know where we think too.
All right.
You know, we're all good partners here. So pretty much all I got to say.
All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you.
Thanks for your time.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Are you planning on sticking around for later?
Maybe a little bit, not too long.
Okay. We're trying to make room for everybody in here that sticks around. Oh, yes.
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Goddard.
Okay.
There's still, unless the governor lifts the proclamation.
Gotcha. Perfect. All right. Via Zoom.
Zoom. Great.
All right. All right. Next up, Mrs. Butler. Are you out there? All right, come on in over to the podium and out the back door when you're done. Yes, ma'am. And if when you're done and you want to come back in and hang out for a while, we will make accommodations. We'll take a short break and make accommodations. We'll give you 5 minutes.
Okay, so if this room had 45 people in it tonight, I think you would, I mean, okay, if it was okay with COVID. If there were 45 people here, you would take note that citizens are concerned about something. I'm pretty sure, I've been to a lot of city council meetings, not recently, but you don't get very often get 45 in here. But today there was a peaceful assembly of 45 Woodland citizens at, in front of City Hall on Davidson. They were there for about a half hour, holding signs, and they were opening up Woodland, stop the tyranny, and various things. And then they were at the City Hall because that is where our mayor's office is. It was a message to the mayor. And then they came out and stood out here, so where the council chambers are, because you also are policymakers for the city. And I'm sure you're in a position to care about our town. So I just wanted to know that the objective of the gathering today was to support the opening of our town and our county. So the group here then went up to council, and we were up there in the Hall of Justice, and then over to the county admin building. So at that time, I was gathering from Castle Rock, Klamath, and along with Kelso and other places. It was roughly about 200 people. So they're just wanting the policymakers, once they're in a position to do something, to be aware of the support you would have if you would choose to move forward with a resolution or something. It'd be nice to hear from our officials. And also want you to know that the assembly was made up of Woodland residents here, business owners, veterans, disabled veterans, immigrants, and a Woodland school teacher. We're talking about fine people in our community. They were not interested in any kind of problem, and nobody's toting around guns or anything like that. It was just peaceful, nice citizens. And so it would have been nice if we could have had some support from any of you. And if nothing happens, I suspect that there will be more of such peaceful assemblies to come. And I'd like to invite you to join and have a word. We did hear from Commissioner Orn today at the county level, and he's working with the sheriff and attorney up there and looking to see what could be done to help the county, because it's critical, and it's critical to the economy and well-being of our community that something happens. And I could go on. My daughter works at the hospital. She'll tell you, so it ain't happening. I mean, it's there, very. They bring in mobile wards, have the TV cameras rolling. This is a St. Vincent. So it's not. Nobody's in those wards. So there's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of different stories about it, and it's something that we should be listening to and considering. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Butler.
Mayor,
Yes.
Ms. Butler,
Yes.
are you aware that the council back in May of this year passed a resolution urging us to basically follow the governor's orders?
I was aware of it later, and I want to thank you for that. I really appreciate that you made the effort, for those of you that voted in favor, and I understand it was a majority. So thank you very much. And if there's any way you can move forward, I can guarantee you'll have a lot of support from the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no one else signed up. I only see employees online. Is there anyone else in the gallery for items not on the agenda? Now's your opportunity to step forward. Just for the record, the door is propped open so folks can come in. All right, seeing no one else, moving on to items on the agenda. Mrs. Ripp, step forward and give you 5 minutes. I'm assuming that you are here as a citizen and not an employee this evening. Okay, for the record, employees are not allowed at the meeting, so I'm assuming you're here as a citizen then.
Okay.
All right, and I'll provide you 5 minutes.
I'm here to talk about under the budget ordinance 1475, which relates to the discussion for the 5% health insurance cost share. I wanted to point out, I sent an email to all the council members and the mayor that this proposal is not favored by tax law. It subjects city employees and the city to higher taxation, and that results in the citizens having to pay higher taxes, federal income tax, social security, retirement. There is currently no budget crisis with the city of Woodland and increased costs. So why during the pandemic, when employees have a strong need for health care, would the city want to pursue this plan? If the policy had a strong reason for its implementation, I would support it. However, decreasing healthcare benefits by 5% provides no benefit and is likely to do more harm than good for our city. And if the city wishes to cut costs, I would love to help and participate in the plan to do more good for our city. If the city wishes to cut costs, I would like to see what we can do to benefit the city the most. Any healthcare cost benefits simply does not make sense. When I met with the mayor on December 7th, he stated he was seeking salary and benefits that were fair and equitable across the board. I heard that the WPOA had a tentative agreement that maybe they did not count how much was reported. The sergeant's base salary is $97,000, and the Teamsters Public Works superintendents are $104,000 to $107,000 plus salary benefits. So the problem is the city increased costs for the non-tax deferred compensation in form of COLA and reduced costs for the tax deferred health care benefits. So pulling money from one stack and giving it back to the other does not help the city or its employees. I support providing city employees and police and public works superintendents a living wage, but these rates at $100,000 plus go above my own salary, which is less than $15,000 to $20,000 after I served the city for over 30 years. In recent years, the city has paid new employees as they've been with the city a long time and ignored step plans adopted that they followed for decades. The impact is long-term employees with important organizational experience do not receive increase in compensation relative to the new employees. So it's clear that very experienced employees, including but not limited to the clerk treasurer and the deputy clerk treasurer, have decades of service to the city should be given commensurate increases in compensation. Specifically, to be fair and just, as was stated by the mayor, these two positions should have compensation increase to those at least equal to those of the public works director and the police chief, as well as the sergeant and the public works superintendent. As new directors were hired in the last 3 to 4 years, and prior to that, the council found that the pay and step plans were not competitive and subsequently placed new hires in higher steps of the 9-step plan. This occurred for the city administrator, the police chief, the public works director, and the community development director. And the city had to re-advertise multiple times. Also, additional benefits were given through vacation accruals, and they started out at higher balances than the hiring policy and the city policy says. The fact is now there are artificial increases to the salary and benefits for the new hire directors, and not the clerk treasurer and the deputy clerk treasurer. This is a general inequity and is not fair. I have been outspoken with the city on a variety of issues, including the need to avoid disparate payment of wages based on gender, concerns about COVID policies by the state, and other issues. I feel that since my compensation has not been fairly increased in the same way as others similarly situated exempt employees, that I'm experiencing retaliation for having been outspoken. There is simply no other explanation for why the longest female executive employees have not had salary increases. And there's a table on page 3 that shows that.
30 seconds, Mrs. Ritt.
On December 7th, the council adopted the budget. And the mayor described how the option to address the refusal to accept the reduction of healthcare benefits would pave the way for termination of the underlying employment agreement. So I'm asking, why would the city council want to terminate my employment based on the 5% reduction? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and I passed out the letter, if you could mention that into the record.
I've got one right here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing only employees online, is there anybody else in the gallery for items on the agenda this evening? Now's your opportunity to step forward. And again, for the record, the front door is propped open for those to attend. We do have a caller that just came on.
Mr.
Caller.
Mayor?
Yes?
I was going to let you know Polly Merwin was contacting me trying to get access to the meeting, and I believe that she may be that caller.
Okay, Ms. Merwin, are you on the line?
I am. I finally got through.
Okay, perfect. Glad to have you on. Thank you. I'll go ahead and 5 minutes if you just give us your name, and I'll give you 5 minutes and you can address council. We've got the speaker on and ready for you to roll whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm Polly Merwin. I am the current owner of Brock's Bar and Grill in Old Town Woodland. I moved here a year and a half ago. I am a city resident. I live here in Woodland, and I am a business owner. My business is a bar and a restaurant. So you can imagine how much I have been affected by these mandates. I don't mean for this to sound about me, because this is something that affects every single person. At this point, I'm wanting to know where the city stands on defending this community's constitutional rights. I am addressing the fact that we need to reopen. I think I did listen to the meeting from the beginning, and I think somebody talked about the rally that was assembled today that went up to Kalama and how to route, and that it was peaceful. I encounter hundreds of people. I work there every day, and people really want a voice. This community has expressed to me on a number of occasions. There's been a lot of talk. They're tired of being shut down. People don't have jobs. I personally had to lay off everybody that works for me. And they've made it very difficult for us to do our job, and a lot of it doesn't make sense. Since the very beginning, I always have questions for liquor enforcement, who have been in my establishment consistently, probably one time a week in the last 8 months. They come in, they make sure masks are on and that we're following protocol and all of that, and we always have been. So I have concerns on a lot of levels. When I ask questions, they don't have answers, and they simply say that. They do not have an answer as to why. So at this point in time, I'm feeling like we need to fight for our rights. And if we don't, if people don't stand up, things aren't going to change. So I'm wondering where you all stand on this, and if you would support, peaceful protests of this nature, which it sounds like possibly you all will. I just want to know what the city can do to help with this situation. That's pretty much it for me.
All right, I have a few questions for you, Ms. Merwin. Have you taken advantage of any of these, I don't want to call it stimulus money, the COVID-related money that the city was administering to businesses that have felt the impact of COVID?
Okay, so let me just back up for a second. I was open 3 days prior to COVID. I'm just a normal person that put everything I owned into this business. So everything is in. I was open 3 days. I didn't qualify for anything because I didn't have a history at all. And at that time, I didn't have employees, so I didn't qualify for anything. This last round, I did get myself on the list, and I ended up getting help from the city. It was $7,500. That was like a couple weeks ago, and I did apply for the third round.
Okay, good. I'm just going to go down a quick line of questioning, and then I'm going to just real quick. Have you taken advantage of any of the other programs that the city has put forward to allow for additional outdoor seating that would expand your business footprint that is at no cost to business owners through our community development department?
Well, thanks to the city, I was able to build a covered patio in the parking lot behind the bar outside.
Are you currently utilizing that now for customers, or are you completely shut down?
No, I am open every single day,
Okay.
and it's painful. Like, I'm having a hard time. I'm struggling taking care of my own family.
I understand.
We were just okay.
Have you been in contact with any other business owners within the city of Woodland? And I'm just going to throw out a random name. The business owner of the Fat Moose.
No, I have not.
Okay, I would encourage you to reach out to him and have a conversation. I can tell you that the city of Woodland takes a no enforcement type of attitude within the city. We are about education and information when it comes to COVID-related items. It is up to the individual business owners, and we can speak to this offline later, to take on the risk. The city going down a road of saying the city is open for business only puts business owners at risk. So there is some, as you can see in the news, is some of the other businesses that have attempted or are open, and the heat that they're going through right now from the state, which I find completely inappropriate. I would encourage you to reach out to some of the other business owners in town that you see that are still operating and open.
Okay.
But I'm speaking in code.
I understand exactly what you're saying, and that was going to be next on my agenda, is reaching out to local law enforcement. And my next step was to reach out to other business owners in the city and see if we could get, a number of people fighting for the same cause. I'm not interested in, I'm not interested in something being not peaceful, and this really isn't political for me. It has to do with our state. And so, yes, those are steps.
The resolution that City Council passed back in, anybody give me a date? Back in May. And what was the resolution number? 14, I can't remember. We can get you a copy of the resolution that City Council passed by a majority back in May, which will help.
Okay. Okay.
And I look forward to a conversation with you offline, not during a meeting.
Okay.
Maybe
that
tomorrow.
Sounds great.
Okay. City Council, do you have anything for Ms. Merwin?
Can I leave my number? You have my email.
I've got your info, but Mr. Frederick would like to provide a comment to you as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I appreciate the testimony that was provided this evening. I think the challenge that we have as local policymakers is where our hands are very much tied by the state. We continue to elect a certain party into the governor's office, and that certain party, unfortunately, we do the same thing with Supreme Court justices in the state. And that
Excuse me, I'm having a really difficult time hearing you for some reason.
Anyway, I will continue.
Thank you.
That's the biggest challenge we have, is we are challenged by the executive branch of government at the state level. We cannot do anything here. If we could, we would. We are bound to enforce the law. Apparently, the governor can have an executive order that never expires, or a state of emergency that never expires. I believe we have a Supreme Court that is going to continue to uphold that law, if you want to call it that. So, unfortunately, I have a friend who's in Tennessee. He says we're open for business. And the reason they're open for business is because they have a different party in office. So elections have consequences. The Conservative Party in the state lost, and we're stuck with Inslee. So we'll try it again in 4 more years.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm not sure that I'm ready to concede. I can tell you that on a personal level. I'm holding out.
Mr.
I'm
Plaza.
holding out.
Mr. Plaza.
Yeah, I just want to add something real quick. In reference to the city of Woodland being open and the resolution we drafted and approved months and months ago. One thing to keep in mind is even though the city itself is taking a more of a stand back and educate type role as far as the enforcement of these ridiculous mandates go, the state can always come in and they can still drop fines and do what they do. So that's
right.
something to keep in mind, you know, as you continue down this road that I think, if not all of us, the majority of us support you in. Something, and I could be totally off the key here, so take it with a grain of salt. Something somebody mentioned to me recently was, as far as businesses like yours, L&I, correct me if I'm wrong, L&I is in charge of investigating businesses with employees, correct? Right, under the Department of Labor.
Right.
The hypothetical idea that they had was if your employees now were let go and brought back in as independent contractors, they would all be self-employed workers, and then L&I would no longer have any jurisdiction over what you do. So that may be something you might want to research and find out if there's any validity to that. That's what I heard, so take it for what it's worth.
Okay. I'm right. I'm taking notes as y'all speak. Okay.
All right, Mrs. Merwin, that's all that we have for this evening, but I will reach out to you tomorrow afternoon and we can have a phone call.
Yes, I will be available, and I sure appreciate all of your time, and I'm really grateful to know that we're all on the same page. So thank you very much, and I look forward. Excuse me?
That resolution number is 722 if you wanted to look it up.
Okay, that sounds great.
722 on the bottom. Yes,
Okay.
so look that up and have a read, and we'll chat tomorrow.
Okay, I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Is there anyone else in the gallery to step forward to speak to items not on the agenda this evening? We'll just go with both. All right, seeing no one else, stand by. Just gonna go. Okay, sounds good. All right, one clicking. Thank you. Okay. With that, we will close public testimony. Back to my paper here. We've come to the portion of the agenda for approval.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second. Moved by Councilmember Plaza, seconded by Councilmember Chapman. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The ayes have it, 7-0. Moving on to reports of City Council. Mrs. Graham.
I was very privileged Friday night to go out and view the light displays in town and through the park and down the street, and see the new poles that DWR was able to put up. And hopefully it'll be nice to see business display banners on those poles in the future. So it was raining like a son of a gun, so.
Yes, it was, and I was there. Awesome. Anyone else? Oh, Mr. Chapman. Oh, Mrs. Rounds. Mrs. Rounds.
Say I've been over to Safeway a couple times, ringing the bell for the Salvation Army and Rotary, and even had my husband out there a couple times doing it. So
Those poor patrons.
and I was in town a couple times, and I haven't been out shopping hardly at all, but I have not, and I have people tell me this, I've not seen the buckets out like they normally are this year, you know, so. We've done pretty good so far. We've collected $2,500 to this point, so I'm really glad that we're going to be able to send Salvation Army that amount of money. It'll be more after the mayor and his daughter, his family were Christmas Eve. So thank you very much, and I'd like to thank everybody that rings the bell for Rotary, for Salvation Army.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It is a shakedown game.
Yeah.
I shame them as they walk in. And Safeway only has one way in this year. So they can't avoid me this year.
We do it at the hour. You get everybody.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Good to know.
Ring the bell constant, and they know when they go in that you're ringing it, so they get cash.
Try to get them when they're going in, but zip will catch them when they come out.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. Look at you. See, play the game right. That's right. Mr. Chapman?
Yeah, with this year we had a review going on, very uplifted to see the city and the citizens out putting up lights and showing they still got spirit. And a big shout out to the Bond family for what they've done out there. I heard on all positive that somebody got malicious on some stuff. I didn't like to hear that, but hopefully we can rally back. Keep the good spirits up, and I want to wish everybody in Woodland a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Anyone else for reports of City Council? Mrs. Graham?
Really quick, also this past Sunday, the Woodland Rotary Club dispensed food boxes and gifts to
134 kids, I think.
Yeah, families.
Nice.
On Saturday, and that was in conjunction too with getting food service from Safeway. So kudos to Safeway because that is cost free to the Rotary Club.
Awesome.
Really was happy with that. And then, as Carl said, I also want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas this year, and hopefully everybody can do and find something positive in their lives, and that the new year coming up brings us closer together and a more positive state, and businesses can continue for their livelihood.
Thank you. Mr. Fredericks?
I don't have a report, but in the future, if there are folks that are out and about that are mildly peacefully protesting, it would be helpful if we could be informed of that through maybe text, just so we're aware that something is going on. In previous administrations, I've requested that we be notified of those types of issues because I've had news trucks at my house before. And I would really like to just kind of, hey, we have a little bit of a concern going on at City Hall, just to find out, just to be informed. There are many citizens who leave here during the normal business hours to go work because unfortunately, there's not enough jobs in Woodland. And so a lot of us have to leave. So it'd be nice to know if we could just get communicated on something like that, hey, this is going on. That would be great, especially when it's right out in front of the clerk's office. The clerk is responsible for the one communicating to us if there's an issue or a concern going on. So that would be helpful if we could get that going forward.
Noted, thank you. And for the record, I didn't realize that they had a second location in Woodland today. So I wasn't aware that they were out here. So. Okay. All right. All right, seeing nothing else, moving on to Public Safety Committee.
We had meetings this afternoon. Well, a short meeting. I had a meeting with the chief over Zoom. My other two members had technical difficulties. So just a quick summary on this. There was nothing to report from the Clark County Fire and Rescue. Then the chief and I discussed, and I see that the chief also discussed with Mr. Plaza and Mr. Frederick tonight, they got here, about the discussion of the contract with the city of Kalama, due to their management our shortage, there has been an agreement worked out between the city of Woodland and the city of Kalama to help with coverage on their shortage. Their police department, Cowles County Sheriff's Office will also be assisting when possible. Chief Kelly reminded the committee that the city of Woodland is priority to all shifts covering Woodland and will be filled with no adverse effects to the safety of the Woodland community. Chief Kelly also recommended the committee encourage the city of Woodland, or the Woodland City Council, to approve the agreement and allow the mayor to sign the interlocal agreement with our partner agency. And then on old business, we gave an update on the new officers. Chief Kelly informed the committee the chief officers are doing well. Officer Sayaka, excuse me on pronunciation, will enter phase 2 of the FTO process on December 26th. And Officer Hanning will begin the basic law enforcement academy the first week of January, where if successful, he will graduate sometime in May. There is a lateral applicant board on January 20th, 2021, where he hopes to have at least 2 applicants in background by the beginning of February. And that was, we adjourned at 6 o'clock. Our next meeting is January the 18th, 2021.
Thank you. Questions for Mrs. Graham? Mr. Fredericks?
I think I wouldn't have questions if I just showed up to the meeting and we'd probably get my questions.
Yeah, and we're about to talk about.
Yeah. This officer that's in the FTO program, is there any reason why they have not been brought before council for like a swearing-in ceremony?
COVID, and there's no employees allowed at our meetings. Yes, the chief did take care of, had a small ceremony for each of the officers, or one of the officers, I believe.
Well,
Yes, so, and it did, I will tell you, it did happen. However, open public meetings are not allowed with employees at this time.
well, as soon as we open back up to the end of the list.
It is on the list for when we open back up. Absolutely. No, I agree. I agree. But we have a lot of stuff to cover once we do open back up. Or what was that? Sorry, I lost my spot. Public Works.
We have no meeting today, but the next meeting will be February the 19th, 2021.
All right, thank you. Questions for Mrs. Rounds? Okay, moving on to the Chamber of Commerce report.
Well, we are still open. We've been having our board meetings and trying to make plans for this coming year, just for information for everybody. Things the way this year has gone for the chamber, we have just rolled over our officers from this year to next year. Our only change in our board members would be Councilmember Rounds is coming off of our chamber board, and that position is being filled by Joy Asmussen from Columbia Bank. We did advertise for a lighting contest, and our decorating winners, we're proud to announce, are the home winner was the Landrigans on Embassy Loop.
Not surprised.
Got their whole neighborhood out there. It was quite a sight to see all these houses decorated the other night. And our business winner for downtown is Woodland True Value. The chamber is also obtaining the permit to be able to sell snow park passes. The only other place to purchase them in our area at the moment is in Cougar. And the visitor center will be closed on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. Otherwise, we are open from 9 to 4, 7 days a week.
Thank you. Questions for Mrs. Graham?
Mrs. Graham?
Yep.
You know, when I realized I need a snow pass, you know where I'm at? Up there in the snow. I feel like I'm stealing all day. Just thought I'd let you know.
I'm sorry, now you are notified that there are where the passes
I'll try
are
to
going to
remember.
be available.
We'll try to remember ahead.
And,
It's a quick 3-minute drive across town through exit 21 at a non-commute time.
and if I can make one more comment about the little demonstrations that went on today, they were posted very well on Facebook. For your information, sir.
I try not to join Facebook because I don't.
I realize that, but it was very well advertised.
Excellent. I'm sorry I missed it.
Yeah, but now you know, they did do a good job getting that out.
Okay. Mr. Plaza reminded me that our federal monies are already paying for the national parks. So our tax dollars are already paying.
No snow pass needed. Just make sure you have your card that says you're a U.S. citizen, right? All right, moving on. Wow. Okay. I've got a small list of things here because I'm going to start reporting now. Yeah. Move on from that. Let's see. So I was also down at the light display with over on Friday evening. Thank you to Public Works and the police department for number one to Public Works for having the guys set up, and then also to the PD chief. I can pass our appreciation on to Officer Gibbs and Officer Murray for coming down for a bit and waving at some folks as they drove by before they got called out. We appreciate that. I was able to snap some photos of Miss Woodland with Officer Gibbs. However, Officer Murray refused to get into the photo. So we will work on him in future events. But the weather was holding up. Please pass my appreciation on to both. I just wish I had documentation that Officer Murray was there. Moving on, the weather did not hold up for us as well, and I'm a little disappointed with Santa because he stole the show from myself and Miss Woodland. So when Santa showed up, everyone realized that we were no longer there. So we were waving at the sides of cars with nobody looking at us. So it was a good time. So thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Chief. Both chiefs, Chief Coleman and Chief Kelly, appreciate you, and your staffs. Thank you. I will be ringing the bell as indicated by Mrs. Rounds. From 11 to 1, I will be shaking people down as they come out of Safeway on Christmas Eve. So please stop by. We take all forms of payment. So make sure that you drop it in the bucket. And I'm pretty good at shaking folks down and taking it across the line, I guess, the finish line at the end of the day. Yes. No, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Let's see. Big thank you to, I forgot. Thank you to Chamber Director Miller for helping us with putting out advertising for the light display as well. Sorry, I misdropped that list. She's the one that put the flyer together and pushed it out, so we appreciate her help in partnering with us and making it a downtown event. So we appreciate you. And the decorations that were put on the side of the visitor center. I almost didn't recognize it was a trailer. Just throwing that out there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The Bond family. Let's talk about the Bond family real quick. Let's talk about some negatives and we'll go into some positives. The Bond family experienced some shenanigans last night with some vandals that entered the property and slashed a number of their large blow-up display that they do. It appears that they were, I think each one about $1,500 or $2,000 in damage was done before one of the family members that lives on the property chased them off into adjacent property. So it sounds like that they were able to sew some of them back together and get them back up. I'm extremely sad because one of them was Rudolph, which is the massive one as you enter into the property. So disappointing. So hopefully we can catch the little what's the word I'm looking for? Scoundrels. There we go. We were able to apprehend. Yeah, right. As I looked at Dave for help, why with that word did I look to him for help? So extremely disappointing that we have some Grinches in our community that are willing to go out there and try to take Christmas away from us. But be warned, we caught you last year. We'll probably catch you this year too. So good luck, Chief. We're counting on you. We're getting the nod. So with that said, how about some positive stuff? The Bonds also, along with Denise Miller, Director Miller, Donnie Connor in the police department, myself, and plus a number of other family members of the Bonds and some children, particularly one that is behind me. Stuffed some stockings here a few weeks ago that will be going out to the community on time from the Bonds. So we are very appreciative of their community spirit and helping out and passing out some stuff, and the help that it took to stuff over 300, I believe, of those stockings with goodies. So very excited about that. And then Santa down at the Spruce with Lady Bond, who owns Spruce and the tattoo shop down in downtown. Santa was there on Saturday. Was it Saturday? Yeah, on Saturday. Came by for a couple hours. They opened up their doors and had some holiday cheer, and Santa came down for the kids and still took them for rides around town. So it's concerning to me that people say that Woodland's not open. But anyway, who am I? I was there participating. With that said, also Shop with a Cop was a few weeks ago, and we haven't met since that happened. Chief, do you want to give a report on that real quick? I'll let you. I don't want to steal your glory. So.
Well, I don't want to say it was a few weeks ago. It was just 2 Saturdays ago.
2 Saturdays. Okay.
So it was, yeah, it wasn't a few weeks. But yeah, it was great. Miss Woodland showed up for us for the first time, and I think it was a little different, but it went well. I think everybody was pretty happy with the turnout. It took a little bit longer than it normally does, and we didn't have as many officers as we normally do. But it was a privilege to be part of it as usual, and our officers did really well and made the city of Woodland proud. And that's about it. The mayor was there for a little while and even took a couple of kids shopping. So it was a good time. Good time had by all. And as usual, Donnie, Sergeant Keller, and Detective Casey did a bang-up job setting it up, and we got a bunch of donations, and we're able to sustain it for a few years now, but we'll continue to solicit those donations, and everybody usually steps up, so it's wonderful to see.
Thank you for doing that. How many kids did you run through?
It was about 100. Well, I'm lying. It was a little over 100. Because we had to cut down the numbers a little bit just because of the situation that we're in with but everybody was wearing their masks, which was neat to see. But good. You know, it's hard to see the joy on their little faces, but you could tell.
Thank you for doing that, and pass our appreciation on to those that participate with that and setting up and coordinate it. Mrs. Miller was there again. The chamber keeps partnering with the city, and we appreciate that too. So we've got some amazing employees that work for the city. That have a lot of community spirit, and then also the chamber as well. So thank you.
One of our chamber goals to be able to work with the city. So
good stuff.
We're happy.
But I was there on hand. It was a little bit different, but it was coordinated. It wasn't as chaotic as normal, but it was still somewhat chaotic. So, but again, a lot of places canceled their outreach, and Woodland was able to still continue providing to those community members that needed it. Couple of things for note for your calendar. We have a workshop scheduled on, oh geez, I just lost my phone. I want to go into a retreat, but I'm hoping that council will do a Monday night workshop to get prepared for that and hopefully talk about some things on January 25th. We're preparing some documentation to provide to you and discuss. We've got a number of things on the list. So January 25th is an additional meeting in January, but we're hoping that you can attend and start the retreat. It's always so hard to schedule a retreat on Saturday. I figured it might be easier to start these conversations on a Monday night, so we're better prepared when we do come together if we need to. But I've got a number of things that I want to go over with you, and there were some things that were brought up during the budget process that I want to discuss as well. So I'm hoping that y'all can make it. I'd like to make it a 6 o'clock meeting so we don't go too far into the evening, but it's on a Monday night on the 25th.
And that's the workshop.
It'll just be a straight up workshop. Yeah, no action or anything, and it's an additional meeting. I hate to bring this up, but I'm concerned. I want to go and talk about some of their speakers this evening. Number one, Commissioner Weil. There were some emails that went around, and I thought that the WQCCs had already been scheduled. And the first one being March 3rd with county and school district and everyone else. So I'm not quite sure where the disconnect or communication is, but we had already had those on the calendar for March, for 2021 already, and March 3rd was the date. So I will get with the port and see if they're hijacking, and that's fine. I'm okay with that, but I think that our communication is not going back and forth effectively. So I will work on that. Let's talk about the protests today, because I too have some statements to make about that. I think it's wonderful that our community folks can get together and stand outside City Hall and let us know how upset they are with some of the rules that are occurring in our state, and I get that, but I can't help but feel and say, and I hope it's not taken disrespectfully, but you're barking up the wrong tree. The City of Woodland is unable to provide protection to our community and our business owners when they're saying let's open up. That is not our role. Our role is to inform and educate, and that's the stance that we've taken. That's the stance we've taken from the beginning. And as noted during some of my report this evening, Woodland is open. We don't need to go out and grandstand and make a big deal about it. These folks, although I appreciate their concern and their thoughts, I believe that they should be protesting their state legislators for a special session to put pressure on the governor to release this. We are not going to be able to do this at the city level. I appreciate Mr. Mortensen, and we all know that we have a tumultuous relationship, I guess, or one that is not. We're hoping to work on it in 2021, and I think it's wonderful that he was out there speaking. But again, it's grandstanding. It is not doing anything for the people. We need to be putting pressure on our state legislators to put pressure on the governor to hold a special session to get rid of these mandates that have been done. Again, I hate to see people waste time, and I feel like that's what's happening here. I commend them for doing it and organizing it in a way, and I appreciate the calmness of it and the solidarity, and I stand with them. But I think that they're in the wrong location to be effective. When we talk about opening up, again, we are open. We don't need to go out and make a big deal about it. You can see what's happened in the media, negatively wise. The city cannot provide protection to these business owners when it comes to fines, when it comes to removal of liquor licenses for lifetimes, providing them or taking away the opportunity for them to continue conducting business. I appreciate the businesses that have made the decision to open up and stay open. That is a business decision. That is not a government decision. And as a government within the city of Woodland, we will continue to inform and educate, and that is it. And we're all on board with that. And I think that we're all okay with that. So I hope that as you make your way around the city and these comments are made, I hope that you relay that to folks. This is a business decision. This is not a government decision. So I'll leave it at that at this point. But I am getting extremely frustrated with the fact that our doors being beat down to do something that we cannot control. But what we can control is the fact that we can look the other way. So there's also some comments that were made this evening that I completely disagree with, and from one of our speakers that my words were taken out of context. So I'll leave it at that. Mr. Boyce.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just a couple things I wanted to mention. First of all, I think I announced last meeting that we had a tentative agreement with the Woodland Police Association that had not yet been ratified by the Guild. Unfortunately, I have to report that the Guild did not ratify the agreement. So we're back to the negotiating table. So after the first of the year, we'll get back at it. I also wanted to mention item F under action items. What we're trying to do here is to make sure we document City Council's intent of not having an additional utility increase in December. There was some concern over the language that got brought up after the adoption. You can see in the packet City Attorney Randolph's opinion on how to proceed, and we are hoping Council will move forward with this and clarify the intent of the adoption of those two resolutions. So that's all I have this evening, unless someone has questions.
Question for Mr. Boyce. Mr. Fredericks.
Mr. Boyce, on action item E, the agenda says that it's a final reading. The summary sheet appears to be the same summary sheet that was used in the previous meeting. And it's saying, first reading. It does not appear to be incorporating any of the changes that council requested at the previous meeting. How should we address this when we move to, I guess, approve ordinance number 1475 this evening?
My apologies, City Council and Council Member Fredericks. Apparently the wrong item was attached. I would request that City Council adopt the ordinance with if the intent of City Council is to continue what they did with the first reading, adopt the ordinance and note the motion that happened with the first reading so it can be finalized.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Boyce? All right, seeing none. Moving on to consent items.
Move to adopt.
Moved
Move to adopt the consent.
by Councilmember Frederick, seconded by Councilmember Rounds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? 7 yeses have it. Moving on to action items. Action item D, authorize mayor and police chief to execute an agreement with the city of Kalama to provide temporary police services. That agreement has been placed on your desk this evening.
Move to approve action item D.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Plaza, seconded by Councilmember Rounds. Councilmember Plaza.
It only makes sense. I mean, we have a interagency agreement with Kalama that and the other agencies in the area that if we ever need assistance, that they'll come to our aid. So it's time for our department to do their part, step up and help one of our partners. So, oh, and also just to clarify, the salaries for the officers, for anybody that's listening and may wonder, is not coming out of the Woodland budget. Kalama is paying for it, so it's not going to affect our budget whatsoever.
Thank you. Councilmember Rounds.
I'm in agreement with it also, but the only thing that concerns me is what if something happens in Woodland and they're in the process with something in Kalama?
Chief?
How's that gonna work?
Chief Kelly?
I didn't hear a word Ms. Rounds said.
Ms. Rounds asked, the only concern that she has is how will it be, basically, I'm going to summarize, how can it be mitigated if we have an officer in Kalama and something happens in Woodland? And they're on something big, how do we get our folks home to help us?
Officers will be, the regular scheduled officers will be on duty. That's considered, for, and I use this term loosely, an extra officer that'll be covering Kalama.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Hey, what are we doing?
We're just clarifying.
Okay. Councilmember Fredericks.
I'm assuming that Mr. Randolph has reviewed this.
Mr. Randolph, are you on? Have you reviewed the agreement between the city of Woodland and the city of Kalama?
Yes, I have. And that is my recommendation. I have also worked with the city attorney for Kalama, and that's their desire as well.
Thank you. Ms. Fredericks?
Mr. Randolph agrees, so do I. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Yeah, question.
Mr. Smith?
So my question, what's going on over here? The vehicles, are they using Woodland vehicles or are they going into Kalama vehicles, I guess? Question for Chief Kelly.
Woodland vehicles.
Will they be reimbursed for the use of the Woodland vehicle?
Will they be reimbursed for the use of the Woodland vehicle, Chief?
Yes, under the federal mileage fees.
Thank you. Further?
Well, my only question would be, so everybody's cool with it, right? Everybody currently employed in the Woodland Police Department is cool with this agreement.
We'll find out if they do.
Chief, did you hear Councilmember Holland? The Woodland Police Department, the Woodland Police Department has signed off on this agreement, not below the executive team, the line officers.
Oh, yeah, they get overtime out of the deal. Yeah, it's regular overtime rotation. They're not being forced into doing it. And if we can't cover a shift, we're just taking hot calls under the local agreement anyway.
So I would be safe to say that this is a similar agreement as to the A Casino agreement.
Correct.
Thank you. All right, seeing nothing else, we'll go ahead to a vote on action item D, authorize mayor and police chief to execute an agreement with the city of Kalama to provide temporary police services. Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman.
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
The ayes have it, 7-0. Moving on to action item E, ordinance number 1475, 2021, final budget, final reading.
To adopt ordinance number 1475, without the addition of the full-time employee for utility billing and exempt employees cost of living adjustment contingent upon making the 5% contribution for health insurance premiums.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Fredericks, seconded by Councilmember Rounds. Motion on the floor to approve ordinance number 1475 without the addition of an additional utility clerk and the cost of living increase contingent upon the 5% premium towards medical insurance.
Correct, and I just want to ensure that the letter dated December 21st from Mary Griffith, the clerk treasurer, is entered into the public record. Do you have that copy?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Ms. Fredericks.
I just want to be clear, there were comments that were made tonight that the city council has the ability to terminate an employee. That is not the case in our city. We do not have that form of government. The city council is responsible for policy. The mayor is the executive branch of government. The executive branch of government has all say in employment matters. So I just want to be clear on that. We have that is not our purview. So I want to make sure that that's clear. I've been here since 2008, probably have, it's 12 years. And this has come before me every time there's a new human resources committee. The first thing that's brought out is the salaries for executive staff. I personally have worked hard for many years to address certain areas of that. It is not perfect. It is not 100% complete. There are some challenges that are in the overall agreement that we have to comply with. And for those reasons, obviously, I believe that is why nothing has been done. I've been with different councils on this matter. I've discussed it with them, and it has been consistent when we have had in our Human Resources Committee meetings. It has been fairly consistent. So I think it's entirely appropriate that staff, in this case, pay 5% of their healthcare costs, which I'm not sure if I have it in front of me, but the cost is minuscule compared to what other folks pay. So I think it's appropriate that we adopt this budget. I think it's a good budget. And again, the thing that continues to concern me is we have a 2008, 2009. What concerns me is the high cost of doing business in the city of Woodland will come back to bite us. There is a high cost. And fortunately, the numbers, the revenue doesn't match the expense. We literally, every year we have money that we put into savings. We take that money out of savings to fund government. We do that every year. And that does limit what we can do. And that's fine. It should. I believe we should have to ask the taxpayers for an increase if we're going to go greater in the property tax. I think that's appropriate. But given the out of control costs that are rising, they're out of the city's control as far as I'm concerned. it is concerning. Long term, it is a concerning deal because it appears to me that we have gotten to a point where our reserve is staying fairly stagnant. That concerns me long term, but I do believe this is a good budget. I believe Mr. Boyce, and I believe staff, the mayor, and the city council have worked hard to put something in front of this council, and I think we should adopt it on behalf of the citizens that we represent as stewards of the resources for this community. And I think we should pass it.
Councilmember Rounds?
I agree with what Mr. Frederick has to say, but I was an exempt employee and did not have to pay my insurance until times got tough. And then we all had to start paying for our insurance also and our family's insurance. So in the real world, it's time that everybody starts paying a little bit on their insurance. This might be.
Councilmember Plaza?
I just have a couple things I want to clarify or maybe make clear for myself regarding this letter and what we're voting on tonight. Just on the first page alone, there are several sentences where the writer is making the claim that the city is trying to cut healthcare benefits. And I just want to make clear that it's not the benefits that the city is cutting. All that they're asking for is that the exempt employees assist or contribute to the healthcare by 5%, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Because, yeah, I know somewhere out there, somebody will read that and think that we're trying to take away people's healthcare benefits, which is not the case in reference to this action item. That being said, kind of along the lines of Councilmember Frederick said, over the years, employees contributing to their own health care has been the topic of almost every contract negotiation, going back to when I first worked here in the city. And not once until now has it ever been an issue by any city employee as far as it's unfair, they're taking away our benefits or anything else. But suddenly the day that it affects exempt employees is suddenly the day that this is the most equal thing on the planet. So like Mr. Frederick said, this is something that is in the benefit of our taxpayers. It's in the benefit of the city. And so I definitely think that it is something that we need to go ahead and pass.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
So this 5% increase or 5% of the healthcare cost is just applying to the executive staff with this motion? Am I correct on that?
The other contracts are already contributing both the public works, the clerical. The only one not at this time is the WPOA, but we're still in negotiations of that.
So I completely agree with them for putting this in there. If you're willing to make everybody else pay and you, the executive staff, are not willing to pay it, I think you definitely need to have that. If you're willing to push it on everybody else, you need to do it as well. And I don't, do we have the cost of what this truly increased per month? What it would be, Pete?
Pete, do you know the cost that the 5% is?
I believe it's about $82 a month.
Yeah, $82 a month for people having to pay their health insurance. Their portion is dirt cheap. I know there's I'm pretty fortunate at 8% is what I pay. And it's around 140, 150 a month. And from people I've talked to, that's still dirt cheap for myself. So 5%, be very lucky at 5%.
Anything further? All right, action item E, ordinance number 1475 with final reading, 2021 final budget. without the addition of utility clerk and cost of living on the executive team contingent upon 5% contribution to health premiums. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza.
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman.
Aye.
The ayes have it, 7-0. Moving on to action item F, confirmation of city council intent regarding water and sewer utility rates. Mr. Fredericks.
Move to confirm that the next rate adjustment will take place on February 16, 2021, to be billed in April 2021, as stated in Resolution 729 and 731.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Fredericks, seconded by Councilmember Chapman. Councilmember Fredericks.
Mr. Boyce, does that work?
Mr. Boyce, did you hear the motion?
Yeah, it does work. Thank you.
Councilmember Chapman.
Have no comment.
Further discussion? Seeing none. Motion on the floor, confirmation of city council intent regarding water and sewer utility rates to be billed in February of 2021 to take effect in April 2021 in regards to resolution 729 and 731. Did I get that right? Thank you. Councilmember Chapman.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza.
Unfortunately, aye.
The ayes have it, 7-0. At this time, it is 8:13. We will take a 7-minute break and allow Mr. Goddard to get set up for the workshop.
You should let him come get a plate of snack.
Well, yeah, oh my God, he's been eating eating around the whole time. Phone died.
Actually, it's gonna increase twice, so it's in December.
Let me see. Let me more quickly.
This
Now that we're
conference will now be recorded.
Now you wanna stay.
all right, go ahead. Hit the button. Hit the button. Go. There we go. Perfect. We're back in session. All right. It is 8:23, and we're going to kick this over to Mr. Goddard for a workshop. Housing Action Plan Update and Shoreline Master Program Periodic Review Grant Update. Mr. Goddard.
Great, thank you very much. Hopefully you can hear me pretty well. So what you have in front of you is the packet that is basically an echo of the presentation I made for the Planning Commission earlier. And I just want to give you an up-to-date as to the activity that's been done and the work that we have done for the Housing Action Plan and the Shoreline update. So with the Housing Action Plan, I wanted to remind you that this is House Bill 1923. It's a 2019 bill. And the idea behind it was to find a way to increase urban residential building capacity. And the reason why we're working on this is there was grant money that was provided by the state to work on building capacity and housing affordability projects and code changes. In our case, we're going to be primarily working on code changes to improve our code. The bill covers ideas like duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, cluster developments, accessory dwellings, changes to our SEPA code, infill provisions, short plats to 9 lots. I'm sorry, was there a question?
No, just a sneeze.
Okay. duplexes on corner lots and some net density increase options. There were also several that aren't applicable to Woodland because we don't have light rail or transportation corridors or planned action provisions or form-based code. And sub-area planning is something we can do, but we currently don't have an effort underway. So just to give you some background, I wanted to give you some time to think about what is affordable. And affordable is considered 30% of a household's income, and that's supposed to include utilities. So when we talk about affordable housing, a household should be 30% of their income spent on housing and utilities. So what is affordable and for whom? So there's really two kinds of people that we're talking about here. One is renters and one is owners. Owners are estimated to have 80% of the community's median income, whereas renters have a little less than owners, and that's 60% of a community's median income. And for Woodland, our median income is $62,430. And just for clarification, median income, think of medians like on highways, half on one side, half on the other. So in the city of Woodland, basically half of the residents or half of the households make more than $62,430 and half make less than $62,430. So the median renter's income is $37,458 and the median owner's income is $49,944. Now, what is affordable? When we're talking about owners and renters, affordable for an owner is, you see on the left-hand side, you have the 49,000, basically 50,000 by 30% is $15,000 a year in rent and utilities. So when you divide that by 12 months, on average, $1,248 per month for mortgage and utilities. On the renters,
is that before or after taxes?
so that is gross.
Okay, thank you.
So renters, they start with a slightly smaller number. And so what's affordable for a renter, rent and utilities is $836 per month. Now, what if you aren't median income? So again, our median income is $62,430. You are considered low income if you only make 80% of that, which is $49,009. Very low income if you're only making 50% of the median, that's $31,215. And you are considered extremely low income household if you're only making 30% of the median income. So that's $18,729. That's annual household income. And when you look at it at a table of what that means, what is affordable for owners, low income housing or a median mortgage payment would be $1,249 with utilities. Low income would be $999 including utilities. Very low income means you could afford $624 for rent and for mortgage payment and utilities. And extremely low income residents can only afford $375 per month per household, including utilities. So those numbers are pretty stark when you actually take a look at the people who are struggling in our community. Trying to find affordable housing, it looks downright impossible, if not difficult. From the renter's point of view, you can see the numbers from median income, $936, down to extremely low income renters in our community can only afford $281 per month. That's for utilities and rent. So what makes housing so expensive? Well, part of it is changes in households. In 1950, the average house size was 983 square feet. And in 2017, the average household construction size was 2,771 square feet. There's also changes in family size. In 1950, there were 3.8 people living in that 983 square foot house. So they had about 292 square feet per person. In 2017, that number had fallen to 2.5 people per house, and each one of them had a whopping 1,012 feet per person. So housing now is extremely large, and the houses are getting smaller and smaller. So there's also the fact that we have close proximity to other communities. So our median income, again, is shown there at the top. And Clark County is about 20% higher at 79,000. Ridgefield is actually about 40% higher at 103,000. La Center is about 30,000 more. Vancouver is just a little lower. Kalama is a little lower than that. And Cowlitz, this is rural county residents, so they're about 15% lower than the average median Woodland household. So we have some expensive neighbors and we have some cheaper neighbors. There's also the issue of housing supply. Woodland construction trends are shown here. You should have seen these numbers before. I include them in my quarterly and annual reports. 2016, 53 units, 54 units in 2017. Then we've fallen off to 27 units in 18, 24 units in 19, and 7 units. That's through the first 3 quarters. And I can tell you that we are still at 7, and it doesn't look like we'll get 8th unit this year. So we just don't have any currently developable properties, and that's the problem we're facing with our supply. Now, which gets us back to the House Bill 1923. And the city has already identified some housing issues that we wanted to address, and retooling our code program is the code changes that staff keeps track of and the Planning Commission discuss. So these ones in red, we had already discussed trying to fix our code in some of these. So those are the duplexes, clusters, accessory, infill. But there's a couple code changes that we can add, like SEPA exemptions, so that there's less paperwork that has to be done up to 9 lots for short plats. So luckily, a lot of these things were on our radar before we even started this effort. So our next step is we are going to be doing some vacant lands analysis. That means we're going to look at the existing land supply and figure out which properties are likely to develop in the next 5 years and what our development capacity is. We're going to review our existing codes and identify where we can reduce bureaucracy and try and streamline the processes, plus fix codes to provide incentives for people to develop additional housing units. There is currently a housing survey that's going on with the Cowlitz-Wahkiakum Council of Government. And if you go to the community development webpage on the city website, there's a link to that survey. And we are trying to get as many people as possible to fill out a survey. And it asks a little information about your individual housing situation. But we've also asked several questions about if you think, if you pick one young person in the community, might be, you know, maybe Miss Woodland or one of your kids or a teenager that you know, where do you think they're going to be living in the next 5 years? Are they going to have to leave town because that's the only place they can find housing? Are they going to be living in the same units? Are they going to be building or living in an apartment, living in a manufactured home, living in an RV? We're trying to get you to think of where you think the youth will be living in the future, because they are represented by a lot of those low and very low income, because they're working minimum wage jobs while they go to school. So we're trying to get you to think outside the box when you answer that. We're also looking to gather more public input and prepare the code change language that will come before the Planning Commission and the City Council for consideration. So that kind of brings you up to date so far. Do you have any questions?
11 minutes and 18 seconds. Mr. Fredericks.
Mr. Goddard, you defined affordable housing. Can you define a living wage?
So that's a good question. The numbers that I've showed you are used based on kind of accepted standards for measuring housing. What is affordable wage is a question I haven't gotten into. And I can spend some time thinking about that if you want me to, but this is more of a housing analysis than it is a economic development analysis.
Right, and I appreciate that. I think the concern is that it appears to me that every time government steps in to try to do good or appear good, and I'll give you an example. Let's make $15 a minimum wage or a livable wage. $15 an hour, it unfortunately puts a lot of youth out of work because these are people that don't have skills. And so one of the things that I've also noticed with the increased livable wage of $15 an hour is I've noticed that at McDonald's that I have computers serving me now, and I don't have as many youth who are learning how to do a job or a skill working. So I think unfortunately that leads me to this issue is every time that the government steps in to help, we make it more difficult. So I guess what I would be looking through this, because city planners typically dream to get as many people as possible in a cluster that they possibly can. That's kind of the way it typically works with city planning. The idea is we want as many people on a footprint as possible. And so I guess what I would like to understand is what costs are associated with something that is going to provide housing, say, I guess it wouldn't be a duplex, but say an apartment building. What do we have in government fees? What do we have that helps address some of that cost to help mitigate that? Because in my mind, affordable housing is driven by the market. I don't like Woodland and I can't afford to live in Woodland. I am going to go somewhere else. And I am finding my own personal opinion that the state of Washington, much like the state of Oregon, is becoming too expensive to live here. So my choices are, I can figure it out. I can move to Kelso or Castle Rock, which tends to be a little bit cheaper, but I'm further away from my job. Or I can leave the state, which is an option that I'm currently looking at. And I guess what I would wonder is, what are we doing? How does House Bill 1923, how does that help me as someone who wants to build affordable housing in the Woodland community? How does that help? How do we get to a point where we're actually helping someone provide affordable housing as you or whoever's defined it?
Sure. So I backed up to this slide because I wanted to make sure that you saw the issues that we are looking at addressing. So on the left-hand side, the SEPA exemptions and the short plats to 9 lots, those are both process reduction efforts. The other 5 that are in red are looking at creating more types of housing diversity or housing opportunities. And specifically where I think we're going to get a lot of traction is the accessory dwellings update, because it allows people with larger lots or with large backyards to be able to potentially bring in tiny homes or mother-in-law apartments that will allow them to create additional units. They generally tend to be small sized, and it allows them to actually pay large portions of their mortgage and their utilities with the revenue from those type of units. Infill is very similar to that, only infill is more larger lots where they're going to subdivide and create additional lots. But some of the issues that aren't addressed by this bill that will be part of our discussion for the Housing Action Plan, and that is our impact fee rates and our sewer connection fees or utility connection fees, and also our utility rates. And so I know that you guys are having these discussions repeatedly on different policy items that you have to wrestle with. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure that I can provide you with some raw generic data that you will be able to take into each one of those conversations and use that to help you make better informed decisions. And one example of that I would like to point out is when you updated the school impact fee ordinance, that you adopted a accessory dwelling unit school impact fee that was half the price of a single family residential. So you guys are already starting to discuss this and implement some of these cost saving measures. I'm just trying to help you provide a more fuller picture so that as you have these conversations. So I'm not sure I necessarily answered all of that question, but was that a good start?
Yeah, unfortunately for me, I just don't see how it would pencil out on paper if I'm a developer. How that pencils out on paper with all of the fixed or costs I have to be able to develop a lot, and then in turn make that work to where I'm charging a very low affordable living. I don't know how or affordable housing. I don't know how you get there given all the costs associated with the development. I know the city can help, but there is a tremendous expense associated with making an investment into a piece of property that I'm not sure how you get affordability there. I just don't see it. And so also, the other concern that I would have is the net density of 6 units per acre. We're not forcing someone to put 6 units on an acre, are we?
Yeah, we are not. We have no minimum. We only have maximum. And a good example is you will be seeing the Woodland Creek residential planned unit residential subdivision on January 4th, hopefully. And it's 41 acres up behind the intermediate school across from McCracken. And they have 14 acres of open space, plus they have a couple other non-developable tracts. And even though they did a density bonus, they are still only 7 units per acre. So even when they use all of our incentives, they're still not getting very high density. The one good thing that we do have going for us is we've also received an application for the Kirkland Senior Living Center, which is down near the Safeway, and they are also 150 units. So I'm working with the developers and I've asked them for some development information about costs. And if we're lucky, we'll be able to compare apples to apples, 150 units of 5-story building development versus single family residential development. And I might be able to provide you with real time, same cost of living, same expenses, and figure out which is actually cheaper, or is it just kind of a myth that planners have been putting out. But I hope to have that data for you within a year.
Are you talking senior home only?
Yes, so the tower, the Kirkland Senior Center, is seniors only.
And another question I have is, where did you come up with the amount of money? How did you come to that figure that is per household?
Great question. I had the same one. I even wrote it down.
Oh, so the information that I use for median income comes from the Office of Financial Management. It's the state office that tracks the statistics for the state.
And do you know where they base that information on? Is it off census reports or?
Yeah. So it starts every 10 years with the census. And so, for example, next year we'll have direct census data. And then the year after that, each community is responsible for indicating the amount of additional units, the amount of population, the amount of demolition that occurred in the community. And so the Office of Financial Management uses that data to adjust year after year after year. So the data that we are using that I pulled, I believe is 2018 data. And the 2019 data would be slightly modified from that. And then of course, at the end of this year, we'll have final numbers. And so they will adjust. This year's information will come out next year. But so they use that base data from the census, and then they get data every year and update it step by step as we go.
Mrs. Rounds?
Actually, I don't have much faith in the census to start with. So, you know, it's kind of convoluted if it's where you're getting your figures from. So.
Any other questions for Mr. Doddard on the side? Oh, Mr. Plaza.
Yeah, it's just first off, thanks for that presentation. Second, this is for me, I'm old and I get confused easy. So is the whole purpose of this, are we looking at building more houses? I mean, I'm guessing we are at some point, but what's the end goal for this house building?
So this effort is to try and create incentives in code to encourage development. That's how we're using it. But there are other aspects of the bill that we are not trying to utilize through our grant. So in other words, there are funding mechanisms for dedicating tax money and revenue for projects like subsidized housing. But I didn't feel that we were ready for that discussion or even to engage in that work, at least for the next several years. And so I didn't include that as part of our grant. I focused solely on creating incentives for property owners to make a decision whether or not they want to develop or not.
Okay, and second question, and this is more of a don't shoot the messenger type thing. So this is just something that I've picked up here and there over the years. It seems like the general consensus is that anytime, you know, Woodland needs to have something done, well, let's just build more houses. So it seems like, I mean, that's kind of the direction we're going again here. What's the, I guess the word is, what's the logic of focusing on homes versus businesses and trying to for businesses to come to the city, which at the end of the day will bring in more housing when needed? Or are we looking more at, well, let's build the houses first and businesses will come from that? Or what's the thinking there?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no easy answer for that. Well, I should say I don't necessarily have a good answer for you on that. Housing is just part of the community as a whole. And since I've been here, we've been very successful at recruiting industrial and commercial developers, but we have not been successful with the residential development. We don't necessarily have to court them a 1-for-1 ratio, but I do hear a lot from developers, and we've even had some city employees who had to move within a certain distance of the city as part of their employment agreement, and they were unable to find housing. And so they had to get either an exception, or one of them actually left the city because they couldn't meet that housing requirement. But I also hear from other employers that their employees have to come long distances to work here. That's part of the reason why our commutes in the morning and in the afternoon are so bad, because only 14% of our residents actually live in town. So I'm hoping by creating some additional housing opportunities, that people who have come here for jobs will be able to find housing here, and that we will get people who both make money and spend money in the community. So I'm looking at any opportunity I can to try and capture growth. The other thing that I do have to say, and that is, as you explore these questions about water and sewer rates, part of the reason why you're faced with having to increase the rates consistently is because you're not having more people who are paying for that pie. So the water and the sewer systems are already in place. Say, for example, these subdivision in this tower, that'll be an additional 300 housing units. That is a huge jump, and it represents about 15% of the population. But that also means that you will have, 300 additional ratepayers who will be paying into the water and sewer fund. So you should be able to reduce the number of dollars or increases that you have to spend on your utilities because you have more people consistently paying their water and sewer bills. So I'm hoping that it's a holistic answer as opposed to just a single cause and effect.
And Mr. Plaza too, we are doing two parallel tracks here. So we are taking in the housing as it comes to us, but we're also working on the 426. We're still trying to develop and create possibilities for jobs to come to Woodland at the same time. So, Mr. Fredericks? Oh, Ms. Holland?
I have a question.
Ms. Holland?
I can wait. So Travis, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So regarding the apartment complex by Safeway, if I remember correctly, a handful of years ago, a gentleman came in and wanted to develop the former community garden property that is kind of in that area for quote luxury apartments.
Yes.
And there was a group of people in the community that like posse up and came in and determined it was going to be for, low income poor people. So that didn't happen. So older folks living in the same vicinity in a 5-story, 150-unit thing. Has anybody had a connection fit over that you know of?
Well, so far we haven't actually had a lot of public outreach and education yet. So I have talked about it when I was at the Chamber of Commerce last year, kind of before COVID hit. I had mentioned this, and it is kind of a different type of model. It's a single tower as opposed to multiple apartment buildings. So it may have less of a stigma, but I think also that site, if you're talking about the Glenwood site, it was flat and rectangular and highly developable, easy access, and it was identified as a shovel-ready piece of industrial property. And so that was part of it, is there was a lot working against that particular site. But I also have to say, in the last 2 years, we are a lot more savvy about our industrial district on the west side of the train tracks. We've done some research and some additional studies, so we now are poised to make additional industrial property that is available. So we don't necessarily have the same pressure on our industrial property that is not developing. So I think we're being successful at doing our industrial development, and this property may not be in the exact same position because it's not necessarily as valuable from a high profile piece of industrial property that could produce additional jobs.
So regarding industrial property, do you know off the top of your head how many chunks of land that are zoned for industrial are sitting empty inside city limits?
So I don't know that number exactly. I can maybe run some numbers. Well, that'll be part of this effort, is doing our vacant buildable lands model. So I can provide some of that information. But I think the bigger question that we are able to answer this year is how much of the large acre industrial properties west of the train tracks, how we're going to get services to them. So those are a lot more likely to develop because they are larger, and services are now on the horizon, as opposed to that site on Glenwood has always had water and sewer. We've just lacked an applicant who was interested in investing that property.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Fredericks?
Mr. Goddard, I appreciate the presentation, and I think it's certainly something that we should do. I just want to make sure that, I guess one of the concerns up here is how do we ensure that if we're creating a friendlier code, how do we ensure that that actually gets to the end person that is buying the home or renting the home? How are we assured that these things will actually work for the end user?
You know, that is a really good question. Councilman Plaza, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus on this, but I get
throw away. He deserves it.
But I get the message that the city of Woodland is not necessarily a big fan of social engineering. I believe my job for you as a council is to create opportunities, create tools, and to encourage citizens who want to develop their property, earn a little extra income, or make a little profit. I try to encourage them to use the tools that are in our toolbox. Whether or not they choose to do that, that's strictly a private sector market factor that is developed by the market, not by me.
So it's safe to say that similar to some of the things that we have put forward for business during the COVID restrictions, and no one's really taken us up on it, maybe one would be an example of that. We're providing an outlet for development or for success, and it's up to the end user to use it. And in this case, the things that we've done, only a handful of, or one or two have taken advantage. Is that
Yes.
kind of what you're saying? Okay.
Yes, and that's a great segue for me to say, if anybody else has thought of any new ideas, please let me know. I will put them in the format that you can put into action.
I think the issue is, or the concern that I have is we're going to spend $50,000. I recognize that it's grant funds, but we have to be cognizant where these grant funds come from. Typically, they come from government, which is taxpayer money. And so the concern that I always have is we're going to pay $50,000 to do a study to possibly change code that in the end, what we're really after is to provide more affordable housing, and it doesn't get us there. It creates a lot of incentives for builders, which is great. I'm sure the building association would support that legislation. But how does it, I guess the concern is we do all of this and we get to the end and it doesn't help the end user, which is what this House Bill 1923, I believe, was the end. That's the goal. The goal is to help people get affordable housing. And I'm not sure by going through these steps, if we are going to help the end user, we most likely will end up helping builders.
Are you suggesting that we'll go through this process, developers will come in, recognize that it's too expensive, and we don't end up with the housing that we need and it's more expensive?
People will still be screaming about how housing is unaffordable.
Okay, I'm tracking now. Mr. Smith?
So after hearing everything, it seems like to me, the only way to really reduce the cost of housing is to have an overabundance of housing, supply and demand. You have more housing than what people actually need, and you can lower the cost of rent at that point. So whatever it takes to actually get more housing done is the only way you're going to actually reduce the cost. But nobody wants to have houses built in their community. So we're going to have high costs in this area. And this is a problem across the country. You look at the cost of housing across the country, and it keeps going up. 2008, I talked to a mortgage lender, and she was telling me that she went to a conference, and there is an extreme shortage of developed land at this point. They can't build enough houses. They are behind as far as population growth in order to keep up. The housing costs and everything is going to keep going up unless they build in overabundance.
No, go ahead.
And I think the challenge to that is someone who bought a home here in 1950 and paid $30,000 for their mortgage. Now it's probably on a home, probably in the 200s. Or that may be somebody's retirement. That may be somebody's retirement through a reverse mortgage that they could get on your home. So yeah, there are people that are concerned with an overabundance of housing. And that's truly, again, market is, we wanted more housing, we have it. Why isn't it built already? It's the same thing with the industrial zone. Why aren't they here? We've had empty dirt for years. Why did they come to Woodland? They went somewhere else. Maybe they needed to be closer to the airport. Maybe they needed to be closer to a port with service. But I think that is the real challenge is that we're fighting to, people don't want it, and people want it affordable, but do want to get it. And it's a real concern. But where's that happy medium? And I just want to make sure that if we're moving forward with doing this study, that it actually helps. Or it's just another study, and Mr. Plaza just said it, it's another study that you buy, you sit on the shelf, you blow it off every 10 years, all the dust that's on top of it, and you go, oh yeah, we did a plan, we did this. And my goal is that we can get something that if we're going to offer those incentives to the builders, the developers, that ends up helping the person who actually needs an affordable house, which I still don't think will ever define what affordable is. If I'm making $15 an hour, 30% of that a month is $780, and that's got to cover my rent, my garbage, my sewer, my light. It's never going to happen. So what's the next affordable wage? 20, 25, 50? And a gallon of milk is going to cost $15 a gallon? I don't think you make the minimum wage whatever you want it to be. But the costs for labor and the cost of goods are going to continue to rise. I think that's a lot of what we're seeing. Okay, we're going to $15 an hour, and then we'll be 20, because that's not going to be enough. Where does it stop? Let's get off the merry-go-round.
Mrs. Holland.
I'm pretty sure nobody here rents, but one of the standard things, and you probably haven't rented in a long time, but one of the standard things with the apartment complexes here in town is you're required to make 3 times the rent to be able to rent a place. So keep that in mind. So if the rent is $1,200 a month, you need to make at least 3 times that just to be looked at, to be able to rent the unit.
That's 33% of your housing cost just on the rent, 33%.
Right, you have to make 3 times that, that's just standard operating procedure everywhere. No, go ahead.
The other part of that is, as the apartments are vacant, they look at the vacancy rate and they determine what the rental costs are going to be by what their vacancies are. If they have a ton of vacancies, they lower their rental rate. The lower the vacancies, they start increasing it. My wife works property management. That's what they do. They look around, they look at the vacancy rate, and they determine if they can increase at that point.
And it's always, Woodland has always been hard to find a house or to find an apartment. It's a high demand.
Yeah.
The mayor had a hard time finding a home. I had to work the streets to find somebody who was getting ready to sell their home without it going on the market. Was the only way that I was able to find a place to live.
We have realtors that harass us regularly.
Yeah.
To sell our house.
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, so my daddy paid like $26,500, I think originally in like 1972. And my neighbor across the street, I think the gal across from me passed away, and I think what my other neighbor said was that house sold for well over $300K. The one next to it, well, the one next to it was 300,000 when she went into assisted care, and then the one on the corner, I think, went for 4. So you can suck it. I'm not selling my house.
There's nowhere to go.
Well, but that's the thing. I mean, realistically, what I hear is kick rocks, sell your house, make a bundle, and get out.
Move to a different state.
Yeah.
Exactly. But here's the thing: is what does that say to Woodlanders? You know, that you're here and now your property is you're invested in this community and you've raised your kids here, and maybe you might be a 3rd, 4th generation Woodlander, but now the money's looking really good. So sell and get out. I mean, really, and then what? It's the gentrification of Woodland. So a town built on farming and logging, which are damn good jobs, and honorable, hardworking people have held those jobs for a long time, but it's like, oh, we don't want your kind here. Somebody else has a lot of money that they'll pay for your house. I mean, to me, that sucks. And I live in a neighborhood with all the older people in my neighborhood are the same neighbors I've had since I was 2, 3 years old. So the only way anybody leaves my neighborhood is they pass away or they go into care. But that's what I'm hearing. Like, my kids could not afford to live in this town. They went to school here. They had to leave. A gal I know, she's a 5th generation Woodlander. She had to get a house in Longview. She could not live in the town her family has been in for 5 generations. She could not qualify for a mortgage to live in this town. So she lives at the lake in Longview. I mean, really, that's kind of what this is. It's like that's how I look at it, just because I grew up here, is it's like the gentrification of our town. Because somebody has a lot of money from somewhere else and they're willing to come here and pay it. So there's a ton of people. I think everybody's pretty aware of what I do every Saturday. I hang out with people at the food bank. And I can tell you, in January, we will do the point in time count through the Department of Commerce. And last year we had over 100 people. Just since COVID, I would say we probably have 30 more families that are unsheltered because of COVID. You may not be evicted because there's an eviction moratorium, but then you go to like a month to month. So your rent just went up $500. If you couldn't afford it at $1,200, you certainly can't afford it at $1,700. So it's a legal way to get you out because somebody's right behind you wanting in that apartment. And you have people who've lost their homes that they've lived in because they can't afford to live there anymore because they haven't worked. I mean, and so these are all the things that I'm keeping in my head. And so when this passed a year ago, when people start talking about affordable housing, I know what they mean by affordable housing, that regular people, a regular family with both working can afford a home. And like normal jobs, you know, I was raised on mill dollars. So I was raised upper middle class. I'm never going to be upper middle class because I can't make that kind of money. But so yeah, so I'm glad that Travis had the opportunity to put this out there. I know what the state legislators were trying to do, it's because there's so many homeless people in this state. And so they're trying to do something. This isn't necessarily, I mean, it's cool and all, but I live in a neighborhood where people with big yards now cram 2 to 3 more houses in their yard because they could. And so now you have a whole lot of extra bodies in your neighborhood. But anyway, so there you go. I'm sorry I hijacked the whole conversation.
Mr. Chapman?
Mr. Goddard, these numbers we're dealing with right now are what's inside the city limits of what we're doing, right?
Yep.
Okay, so to skew these numbers, when we bring to the table about expanding city limits, make these numbers better.
I'm sorry, was there a question there?
Yes, he said, at what point do we start discussing expanding the city limits? to make these numbers better, look better.
We're limited on what we got. When we start bringing back the table, expanding the city limits to make sure that we have more land within inside city limits to make it more plausible and feasible for developers to come into.
Yeah, I think that is a good relevant question that we are going to have to talk about. In 2018, we kind of started this conversation and we looked at the overall supply. For better or for worse, in the last 2 years that we've been kind of on hold, there hasn't been a lot of development, but it seems like this year we've had several projects that are looking at, so we had the Quail Homes 40 lot, we had the 150 lot Hinton development, Woodland Creek subdivision, and we're looking at the Kirkland Living Center. We've also had 2 apartment projects that have had pre-applications, but the majority of the vacant, easily developable land is now multifamily higher density. So we're going to need to take a look at those numbers, and that was on our agenda for 2021 to kind of step back and look at our comprehensive plan, including our urban growth boundary. We've had discussions about trying to look at the entire bottoms and the need to master plan that, because we can't quite get a handle. We can't even predict what the county is going to do, because we keep getting these wild pre-application conferences that frankly scare the crap out of me. As much work as I have to do, I don't know how we're going to handle conversations on some of those pretty difficult projects the county is looking at. So we need to balance all of these things, and the last 2 years have been, we've really spent some time and money looking at some good information and doing some good studies. We've got the water and the sewer plans, we've got the we got the rate study, we have the industrial area study, we have the exit 21 study, we now have more information about exit 22. Plus, we actually have an idea of what our next 4 or 5 years of construction in the residential area is going to be. So we have a lot of information that instinctively we talked about in 2018. Only next year, when people are showing up at the hearing saying, we don't need this, and we don't need jobs, and we don't need housing, we don't need industrial, we don't need traffic, we don't need road improvements, we will now have data that allows you to say, well, that's not what we see, and we're looking at this, we're looking at that. You'll be able to make more informed, better decisions starting next year.
On the 25th. I don't know. I don't know if the question, Travis, and I don't know if we're there yet. Is that something we can make part of the discussion for early 2021 discussions when we start talking about work plans for city council and part of those discussions, or are we a little too early still?
Oh, I think that this housing action plan and our buildable lands inventory, theoretically, I will be able to tell you how much land we have left and what kind of balance we have between our multifamily and our single family stock. And we'll be able to talk about urban growth expansion based upon that good data, because we won't be subject to the torpedoes that people kind of sunk our discussion in 2018 because we didn't have a lot of information and they just torpedoed us left and right. This year, you will have the information to actually make the decisions.
And when do you think those discussions can start to be had?
Well, whenever you tell me you want to start having them.
Okay. January 25th from Mrs. Hall.
Yeah. We can start having these conversations, and if the council were to want to assign a liaison, when I worked in Othello, we had a council member who went to all of the planning commission discussions and was the liaison between the planning commission.
Mr. Fredericks. Well, it's unanimous. Mr. Fredericks will be your liaison. Just kidding, sorry. His head was going down on the table like, ugh.
Hopefully we can explore the most legally easiest way. Whatever we can do from a expedited through a legal process that is the safest for the city. That would be the hope on that. And for the record, this is the longest 10 minutes of my life.
Just under 9 minutes so far.
We just hit 8.5 minutes. It's a kind of minute and a half to go.
Isn't there another 10 minutes left?
Yes.
I think we move on to the next.
Second.
Okay, they're asking to move on to the, you're not looking for direction tonight, Mr. Goddard, you're just updating, correct?
Yep.
Perfect. Presentation 2.
Okay, let's get that queued up.
Hey, just so you know, I have been pushing for partly. So when can we start talking about? When can we start talking? Sorry, just slow down. When can we start talking? When can I expect this to come forward? Yeah, and he's at work. I know that he's still trying to like those things. No, he did. It was 11. It was 11 and 11:18. He did it. Excuse me. To be fair, Mr. Goddard did do his portion within 11 minutes and 18 seconds. I'm just saying. Don't go hard on him now. Thank you, Mrs. Rounds. Mr. Goddard, the floor is yours once again.
You could have muted me at any time, Mr. Mayor.
It's not you I wanted to mute. All right, take it away.
Okay, so this is an update on the Shoreline Master Program effort, the periodic review that we've been completing. And you have seen this once before, so I'll try and make this quick. This is the periodic review that's required every 8 years, and our update is due in 2021. And the object of this effort is to make sure that we're still compliant with state regulation and to get public input. So what we're talking about is Horseshoe Lake and Lewis River. Those are the two shorelines within the city, and the uses that occur within those shorelines, and they are public uses and recreation, residential and commercial uses. We do not have any industrial uses that are within our shoreline. So the city's website, if you go to the community development webpage, there is a Shoreline Master Program page, and there are several periodic review documents that are available for review, and they include staff drafted language, and the Planning Commission will be reviewing these in February. So these are the documents that are available on our website. And the language that we've had to update, this is a quick list of them. Threshold, the dollar threshold for exempt docks has been increased. Also dock replacement. So if you had an older dock and you needed to replace it, you can put in the same size, and even if it's worth more than the exempt dollar value. We changed a development threshold, and I'll get more into that in a second. We cleaned up some language for hazardous substance cleanup. So if you're cleaning up hazardous spills, it's easier to do under the Shoreline program. Cleaning boatyards, which is not applicable to us, and also Department of Transportation state safety projects are now easier and exempt from certain reviews. We also clarified some language about dates and some process cleanup. And then we added some ADA, Americans with Disability Act exemption language, and a target timeline for Department of Transportation. The other thing that we've added to this is we would like to do some shoreline map cleanups. So if you get onto the website, this is the list of all the changes that we've made. On the left-hand column, you'll see that page 2.7, we replaced the definition for development, and there's an item off to the left. I'll explain to that in a second. But essentially, this is the short list of changes that we had to make. And the way it works is Department of Ecology provided us with a list of changes to state laws. And it was my job and Melissa's job to go through that list and to make sure that the city code was compliant. So they listed them. This was one of the 2017 changes. It's 2017A, and they changed the cost threshold for substantial developments. And basically, when we adopted the comprehensive plan in 2015, that number was 6,416. So if you did a project and it was worth less than $6,416, you could be exempt from shoreline review, but because of inflation, that number has risen to $7,047. So that gives you an idea of the kind of type of changes that we made. And this document is basically start to finish, gives us what we needed to go. And here's an example of one of the changes that we made. There was a development on page, or there was a definition for development on page 2.7, and the old one is crossed out and the new one is highlighted because it matches the state definition instead of creating our own local definition that didn't match the state's. So that's an example of the cleanup that is in the document. Now, the map that I had talked about, if you're familiar with this map, this is the city's Shoreline Management Act map. And you'll see that it's a lot like our zoning and comprehensive map. If you're in the chamber and you look at the maps that are on the wall, you'll notice that there's a gap between our city limits and the edge of our urban growth boundary, but there's also white gaps between our city limits and actually the edge of the river. And part of that is because the old city limits or the old river line, edge of the river used to match, but over the decades, soil has been deposited and these properties have grown out as the property moved to the east. But that property is not regulated under our zoning code or our comprehensive plan or our shoreline program. So it's kind of a no man's land. And for example, the bonds own property on the river, but the city limits stop several hundred feet away from the river. So if Michan wanted to build a dock in the river, she would have to go to this next map. You can see on the right-hand side, this is the Cowlitz County map. And under the Cowlitz County Shoreline Program, she would have to get a dock permit from Cowlitz County instead of the city of Woodland. And so it's one of those funky issues where I can't help her, even though I'm right down the street. And on the left-hand side of this slide, you'll see that inside Horseshoe Lake, that area is covered by the Clark County Shoreline Program. But when you actually look at, our city program, that there's nothing. So if that gentleman ever wanted to annex into the city, I can't help him unless he amends the shoreline program, because we can't annex him, we can't give him zoning, and we can't give him shoreline designation because he's in this black hole on our maps. So what we're trying to do is we are proposing that we assign shoreline designations within our urban growth boundary, which means that if our city limits ever move, or if Ms. Bond were to request annexation to the entire property line to be included in the city limits, that I would not make her update the shoreline program, and each individual property owner would not have to amend the shoreline program. We're going to do it once, and it's going to cover everybody. And this gives you an idea of what we're doing. You'll also notice that the airport property, it's in our urban growth boundary, so I would like to assign it a shoreline designation so that if it ever develops or annexes, that we would be able to consider it under our Shoreline program. That's basically it. I wanted to let you know that we've done our environmental review on this case. We've prepared a draft ordinance, and that has gone to the Department of Ecology for review, and we're having a joint hearing with Department of Ecology February Planning Commission meeting. So that's, I believe, February 18th, 2021. And it'll go to the Department of Commerce, and we are we'll take it to the City Council for review as soon as we've got our review processes completed. Information is available on my website. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and give me a call at the office.
Well, I will say that Mr. Goddard did that in 8 minutes and 30 seconds, which made up for the overage of his first presentation. So well done, Mr. Goddard. You were under 20 minutes.
Thank you.
Mr. Fredericks.
Mr. Goddard, I appreciate this. I'm looking forward to understanding how the new state regulations benefit the people who are the end users of the water and also the property owners that are on the water side. Well, I look forward to that. My hope is also that we can get a list of address of anyone who's going to be impacted. We can notify them in writing that we're going to be starting this process, and we can engage them. Typically how it works in Woodland is nobody gets involved, and then it gets all the way to the end. We make a policy decision, and guess who shows up? 15 people who live on the lake. So my hope is that we can engage those folks proactively, that let them know that we're going through this process again, what we're doing, how we can maybe help. I hate to say that, but yeah, maybe find ways that we can work together and kind of improve that. But I just want to make sure that we're reaching out to especially maybe people who are on Horseshoe Lake. They used to have a committee here. They don't have a committee anymore, but we want to make sure that we're engaging them in this process if they feel so inclined to provide testimony or help. Because I think the mayor said this best, we're making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. If you want turkey, get down here and tell us you want turkey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, you're gonna get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
The young man that was here this evening, he was my muse for that one.
Thank you.
Mr. Goddard, have we reached out to the folks on the lake? I want to say that you've told me you've been in contact with them.
So not so much the people on the lake, because we are not making any changes that would affect them directly. The property owners along the Lewis River who will have mapping changes, I have contacted the two biggest landowners and had conversations with them. Misham Bond said that she supports what we're doing and it makes sense and she trusts me. And then the other one was Connie Taylor, and Connie and I had several conversations, and after about an hour and a half conversation, she kind of came to the conclusion that what I'm doing makes absolute sense and she supports it, and she submitted a letter in support. So I have been doing one-on-one discussions with property owners. About the only property owner that I have not been able to get a hold of is the gentleman who lives inside Horseshoe Lake. And I've left him a message, but I have not heard back from him. Other than that, our outreach included postings, publishings, and we've also sent 2 letters describing this process with our monthly or bi-monthly utility billing. So everyone in the city has gotten at least 2 letters describing the process and asking them to reach out to me. So we are in the process of doing that education and outreach, but so far we've been doing everything we can given that our office is closed.
Probably would say that they could let people at Horseshoe Lake know.
We don't have that committee anymore.
I know.
But I think that there are certain people that I would definitely reach out to, because I'd rather have them part of the
Hear about it
process
from us, right.
than showing up at a city council meeting blasting us later.
Which, let's be honest, regardless if we do it beforehand or after, they're still going to do it. Oh, gotcha.
Maybe if it wasn't COVID, we could have like snack time.
Snack time.
Why don't order some drinks and then invite everybody? Food.
Well, there's a few restaurants I could suggest that we could go to.
There you go.
Oh, wait, we're not open. Sorry. Other questions for the Shoreline program? Oh. It's 9:20. Thank you, Mr. Goddard, for all your work on this. We appreciate you and thank you for the updates this evening.
No problem. Thank you.
You bet. And the time is now 9:29. We're moving out of workshop. And we've come to the motion for adjournment. Oh. Moved by Councilmember Frederick, seconded by Councilmember Rounds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ooh, anyone opposed? Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you, everyone. It is the week of Christmas. You can thank Mr. Fredericks for holding you over.